Welcome to Pioneers, the show where we explore the intersection between humanity and AI. I'm your host, Ankar Patel. Over the last 10 years, I've built 3 AI startups, written 2 books about the subject, and I run a weekly AI newsletter. I also regularly teach and speak about the topic at conferences. This technology has grown faster than I think any of us could have imagined, and it's making us ask really important questions, such as how ethical is AI? What will this technology look like in a few years, let alone a few months? And most importantly, does it have the power to truly change the world? And what does it mean for you? On this show, I'll be interviewing the founders, operators, and pioneers that are introducing AI into their companies and industries. We'll be asking them the really heavy-hitting questions that make them dig deep into the core of what we do. And without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Today, I have Jeff Coyle, the co-founder and chief strategy officer at MarketMuse. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how are you? I'm so glad to talk to you today. It's going to be an exciting conversation.
Absolutely, glad to have you here. So we at Pioneers love the origin story, the founding story of how individuals like yourself get to where you are. So we'd love to hear if we could kick this off with just the story that you went through to get to where you are with MarketMuse.
Sure. So I think that it starts really, I went to undergraduate at Georgia Tech for computer science, and I started not really thinking that I was going to ever found a company or be with a startup. I had taken an internship at a big business, a big company that a TV channel, being a developer, and a startup also gave me an offer for an internship, and they were just about to get VC funding. Business, and it just seemed like it was going to be more fun. So I, reneged on the other agreement and went to the startup. And on the 4th or 5th day, I had gotten in there a little bit earlier than some of the other interns, and the one of the leadership group asked me to do a little bit of research on competitive analysis. And I don't think he expected much from me, and I handed him about a 120-page document a couple days later, and he's like, "You're the head intern," and I'm like, "All right, cool." Well, fast forward, that gentleman became my mentor for 15 years, and he was, through Knowledge Storm, which was the first company when I graduated. I stayed with them full time and learned from him, the world of product management. I was already really intrigued in building search engines and products that relied on search engines. So at the time, it was intranet searches, and I thought the future was going to be vertical search engines about, focused lists of sites that were in their own, bespoke worlds. It's kind of funny now as we're looking at the world of GPTs, that, the speaking to your own focused crawler-based search engine. But this was, in the early 2000s, I was in, this is about 99, 2000 to 07. And I stuck with them, and we were sold to a major publisher, a tech target, who I worked with for 8 years. But my journey there was learning about how search engines work, and then becoming kind of an early person in the search engine optimization world. But the unique thing about what I brought to the table was I was a developer and a computer scientist, and knew how search engines worked. So I always looked at it from that perspective. I wasn't just looking at it from a marketing perspective. And I think that served me well in building, managing products and such. So when I left TechTarget, which was in the 2013-ish range, just before that, I was working on a project that was, explicitly, I'll tell you, I was trying to take content and classify it into a taxonomy, using knowledge graphs and using, some auto tagging. And I was looking for vendors, and there a couple of vendors existed, and I knew about them. I was evaluating the software, and I found a gentleman he did an interview for like a venture talk show in Boston for a thing called MarketMuse. And I called him up and I said, "Hey, Aki," who became my co-founder. I said, "Hey, Aki, does this classify documents in a taxonomy?" He says, "No, not really." He goes, "Here's what it does do." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's ridiculous." It took basically a 10-hour process down to about 4 minutes. And I was like, you know how amazing that is? And he's like, you tell me, because, Aki's magical in that way. And I told him, and he was like, oh my gosh, do you want to be an advisor? And I'm like, yeah, sure. What's that? And then I was working at I was doing some consulting work for a private equity firm. And a few months later, he came back and he said, hey, I was talking to some people about the use cases you described. And, I think we're going to actually take this to market and raise money. Would you like to join as a late co-founder? And I said, what's a late co-founder? And he said, it means you're not going to get paid for like 2 years. And I'm like, sweet. So basically, I go back and I'm like, so I've got a couple of great consulting clients working for a private equity firm. Those are pretty sweet gigs if you can get them. Or I can choose door number 3, which is guaranteed no money and a lot of pain for a couple of years. So obviously I chose door number 3, and now 10 years later, we were the first people to build software in this space time and time again. So we were automating content strategy. We built the first content brief in software. We had built the first content plan generated with AI. And we were really an AI first business. Our challenge has been we've beat the market by 2 or 3 years every time. And then we're battling back to get to product market maturity. So our hope is that now the next few things in our last few releases are going to be on market. And, I've been said that, I was the first person talking about NL, natural language generation in search. But I kind of want to be known as somebody who's like built really, really successful, like super scale products on the topics, not just first, right? I don't care to be the first product. I want to be the best product, right?
Yeah, no, I mean that's a great founder story because it just shows how intoxicating founding a company is and working on an early stage product, that you're willing to go even financial success in the short term for something that's higher risk but tremendously more reward, right? And that I think is your journey. Like you left something that was more secure to do something that was more risk taking, but ultimately you found more fulfillment in it, and clearly it's worked out because you're still doing it so many years later.
Right.
And I think the other big challenge that you're mentioning is that I think you've been at the forefront of this technology for quite a bit of time. And I think the challenge always is, how do you take a new technology that's emerging and then actually build a really great product behind it?
Right.
And then ultimately a really great business that actually scales well, right? Because technology can only get you so far. I know a lot of companies today, they just slap Gen AI into their marketing materials, that they put a data AI into their domain. And they do use the technology, but it's not deeply integrated into a product, or it might be superficially integrated, and they're expecting it to give them overnight success as a business, and it doesn't, right? There are a lot of like hard things. Ultimately, you do still need to solve problems for people, for users, right? So I think digging more into that, I'm curious, with MarketMuse, who do you primarily sell into, and ultimately, what type of problems are they trying to solve?
Sure. So we're selling to the person in a business who's responsible for content, for making decisions about the content on their websites or in their marketing materials. So that can often be, depending on the size of the business, they might have somebody who actually is a content strategist. Those are our sweet spot. If you've got a content strategist, you're my person, right? Or where your search engine optimization team has been empowered to drive decision making on content. A lot of times search engine optimization teams aren't. They're only doing kind of like, they're only part of the funnel, or they're only kind of like improving content as much as they can. Where they've been empowered to be part of the discussion. They are probably the most successful teams. And then editorial teams who understand that technology will drive performance. Those are the triangle of success. If you've got all 3 of those things, like some of our clients have, it's like a magical thing, right? You've got an editorial leader who wants to win. You've got a content strategist who effectively is an informed mediator between the performance team, whether it's conversion rate optimization or search, and the edit team. And then you've got the search team who is like, oh my gosh, they're actually listening to me and I'm giving them advice. Because that was me. I was giving advice to editorial teams like at Tech Target in 2007 when because I never had editorial when I was at Knowledge Storm. right? We were just syndicating white paper content. We were like the people in 2001 who were trying to get companies like IBM and Oracle to have content on their websites. Like we were the first people like, no, you should have content on your websites, not just brochures, right? And so when I got to Tech Target, they had 300 editorial people, and they were amazing at what they did, right? These were the experts, and I didn't care. I was like, what? We just want to get more traffic, right? And so I was trying to give them information and not understanding why they didn't want to take it and put it into their content strategy. And so my journey of like going from being like, just put these keywords in this document, and getting the editorial process. And now as content effectively goes to infinite scale, now I appreciate that editorial process. Like, it gives me chills, because that's where the money's going to be made in the future. It's people who understood the editorial process, and they care about expertise, and they understand that the value isn't always in the final copy. It's in how you got there, because that's going to drive more wins. Like, the batting average is going to go up. And that was always MarketMuse's value. So when we're selling into a team, we're selling the value of making more great decisions with content. So if I publish 10 articles and only one works, well, if I can give you insights that can allow 3 of those things to work, you just 3x your ROI. It seems weird, because you publish 10 articles in both scenarios. Maybe then I can show you how to make 20 articles and get 6 to work. Now you're looking at 6x, right? So making great decisions about what to create blows away the ROI on just going to the final draft. And that's really when teams get that, those are the ones that are most successful.
It's super interesting, because it seems like the current frame is that AI allows you to churn out a lot more content, right? Because of speed and the ease and the cost.
Right.
But just more content doesn't mean better outcomes, right? And I think what you're highlighting is the process is super important. So how you get to really great content, and then measuring what does that mean in terms of an outcome space, and then being able to use that to get more of those like great content with great outcomes, that will really move the needle materially for a business, right? And you're able to kind of work through that. Has it been harder for you this year, or easier with all of the like the Gen AI capabilities around content creation?
So I'm really into music as well, for people that know me, and I'm really into like some really obscure music, right? And for me, this year has been like one of my bands that I love, like has gotten a top 40 hit, right? Everybody's into it. And I'm like, yeah, I was into them before, and this is how it actually works, right? So for me, it's been a lot of, the case where my favorite band is now on the cover of Time magazine, and I'm like, wait a second, and a plumber is at a bar is talking to the bartender about them, which actually happened to me one time. I was at a bar in Jacksonville, Florida, and a gentleman who I know that runs a plumbing company, not talking to me, started up a conversation with the bartender about natural language generation, and I'm like, do I go in or do I not, right? But no, that's been the story for me. What I've been thoughtful about is, it's to say the injection of large language models hasn't changed product market maturity. And that's, people don't believe me, but it hasn't, right? What it's done is it's democratized access to these things, right? They're still just technology. And so for me, it's been about, how do I make sure that anything that I build, if it is taking advantage of generative AI, that it is truly differentiated. Because like you mentioned, you said the intoxicating allure of founding. For me, yeah, obviously, and I've founded 2 businesses now. I also own a beer brewery in Georgia. Some people don't know that, but yeah, it's very intoxicating. But it's also intoxicating to just plug in an AI too. Like, that seems really easy to plug that in. I think that what you're going to start to see are these kind of mediocre implementations, and then you're going to see really special differentiated value. So what it's allowed my entire business to do, I think, is sit back and say, hey, everything we do from now into the future is going to be about great user experiences and ensuring that we're differentiating. And I'll give a hot tip, in my opinion, for the world is, I think the burden has been put on product managers and startup founders that you have to actually tell people how hard something is to do manually now more effectively, because we are getting into magic box scenarios from a product management perspective where, pressing a button and then something's done. It's almost like, make sure you're reminding people how hard this is to do manually. And that's like the onus has been put on the creator of the software more so than in the past, because I think that sometimes that gets lost. And if you don't understand how much pain is being, removed from this process, the people using your product might actually not be smarter in the end, and they might become over reliant. I was working with a client with some new technology that I'm building that you're a little bit aware of, and they looked at it and they said, the cool thing about this is it's actually making me better at my job. Like, not just better at getting more content out the door, but better at understanding how content strategy actually works. And I think that's a hallmark. The hallmark for good products is going to be, did using this make you actually smarter? And I think if you're really good at using ChatGPT, for example, right, this just naturally happens. Like, the responses you get coach you to actually get better at using it. Whereas if you're just a passive user, you're popping in for a response and you get a response. So I think that that's what's going to really separate the people who are innovating right now and ones who are just kind of, putting it on as window dressing.
I think that's right. I think there is the more thoughtful integration of AI to automate things that used to be really hard, right? And I think once you automate something away, which we're really focused on at Multimodal, and you're getting into as well, which is something that used to be really hard can be done a lot more easily. But you still want to make sure the human understands the process, how it works, how to refine it. Because once they lose that connectedness to what's happening behind the scenes by the AI, it makes them potentially worse at what they do. But if it enables them to think more clearly, it gives them more insight, makes them better at what they do, then all of a sudden it becomes superhuman, right, in terms of capability with the AI assisting them. But that connectedness to the underlying task at hand is super, super critical. But it does make people that were really good at their job much better, right? Because now these really talented individuals become, the term that I love is they become superhuman at what they used to do.
Oh, I'll give you two great examples of that. And one is a personal tragedy of mine that I live in every day, right? It's that, MarketMuse, one of our core products is called Optimize. And what Optimize does is presents you a list of topics that, if you were an expert on a topic, you would include those topics in your page just naturally, or in a collection of pages about that topic, like a theme, a topic model. But what it actually is, as you're very familiar with, it's a 3-dimensional vector model of this topic, and it's very complicated. But we initially, because nobody knew what this was, right, we put it in a keyword list format, right? And so people looked at it and they're like, oh, it's just a list of keywords, I'm going to pepper those keywords in. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. Like, this is like a real thing, right? But what that also did was it made us susceptible to lower quality competition who would emulate the experience but just show people a crappy keyword list, right? And so the two pieces that really resonated about what you said is, by not keeping the person connected to that, we lost market share because 2 or 3 competitors looked and said, hey, we can do that too. And they just did it like a low quality list, right? Using, correlation math and stuff that doesn't even work, right? And so I'm never going to make that mistake again, right? I want to make sure that if I'm going to show something that appears to be simple, it's going to be super duper clear that it maybe, is more magic than you might think, so that when someone else gives you a low rent version of it, You're not like, ooh, I can switch to that. It's cheaper, right? Or something like that. So it resonated with me as you were talking about it. The other example is where I am, thinking critically about all the ways people can use language, and it's turned me into like a weird nut about linguistics. Like, and I never was really into that side of it, but now I'm like getting into linguistics matters. And so some people are using LLMs and they think that it's magic box, right? I type this in, I get results. But I'm like, wait a second. You think that that's like just like a probabilistic thing, but it's actually a linguistics concept. Like, so there's all these like these things that only one half of 1% of humans know about how these things work. And each one of those little nuggets, I think, is an opportunity for an entire company, right? And that I'm not going to build all of them, but there are these little bits, because what it all is founded in is how language works, how probability works, and I think there's a lot of those nuggets out there that people haven't even mined.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I'm curious. Just switching gears a little bit.
Mhm.
What are some lesser known ways AI is enhancing the ROI for content marketing beyond just the typical ones like driving traffic and engagement?
Well, gosh, yeah. So I like to think about the entire content life cycle and process that goes into it. You probably can imagine I've said this a lot, but research, planning, prioritization, briefing, writing, editing, publishing, optimization, post-publish optimization, and maintenance. All of those things. Every one of those things has a series of steps that can be improved, right? And so I think that one thing that I coach teams on is to really do a process inventory of every way you touch, everything you do, all the human labor you do. Because some people, they associate the cost of content only with how much it costs, or they paid a writer, or their effective cost of paying a writer. But that's not the fully loaded cost of content. It's all the time you spent deciding what it was going to be. It's the time you invested in your brand, style, voice, tone guide. It's any updates you had to do. It's if you didn't plan to do updates, or you don't do updates, that's a problem. But if you are planning those in, you do have a fully loaded cost of content. Trying to improve the efficiency and the effectiveness of each step in the process is my number one win, right? And it's what's made me, superhuman. I am able to, like I mentioned before, the planning steps and the research steps, those efforts being more on the money, being able to bat, as I mentioned before, 60, 70%. That's where you can really drive wins. And the cool thing about this is, and I'll highlight it, is it's maybe unintuitive, but the cool thing about this, that is the unexpected ROI, is the ROI of people believing that you're predictable as a business. Most content teams are perceived as being like it's throwing dice. It's a gamble. It's a black box. They don't actually know how much of the content is going to be successful. Well, when you put in quarter over quarter, where you say you're going to publish 80 articles, and you do, and 40% of them are successful, and you can say, hey, I'm going to only get better with these numbers, the business starts to trust you more. So the unexpected ROI that I'm having with content teams is where the leadership team doesn't see them as costs.
Sure.
As a cost driver, they actually see them as a value driver. And that makes my heart very happy, because you're looking at editorial leads, they were seen as, artists who may or may not, they were a necessary evil. They were, artists who may or may not produce success. Well, now they're coming to the table and saying, I need 30 more people, because my editorial team are functioning like, finely tuned machines. And these were people who were only previously perceived as experts, right? Now they're experts who perform. That's where the magic happens,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love the fact that you broke it down into AI can help different aspects, different parts of the process, right? So it's not just single prompt, you get a generation, and then you modify it somewhat and you post it.
Right.
A really thoughtful content generation process involves doing research, and that might involve some level of Gen AI or machine
Right.
learning. And then you're planning out what that content should look like. How does it fit your brand and tone and style?
Yep.
You have a piece that maybe is initially drafted by AI, and then you're able to go and refine it again with the human in the loop to get the final product out. So you
Yep.
get this beautiful orchestration of different types of AI, different types of
Yes.
ML that's being injected to get to the final product. It's not just this monolith single model prompting it to some outcome. It's actually the intersection and the orchestration of all of that to get to the right result. How do you envision the role of AI in content marketing and SEO over let's say the next 5 years? Where do we go from here?
Well, gosh, 5 years. If I could predict 5 years in the future, I did have somebody say in a presentation at an event in Las Vegas in October. They were like, no one would have predicted ChatGPT was going to come out, and then they stopped and he goes, except Jeff Coyle. So yeah, I had predicted the democratization of this technology when I saw the prices coming down on the compute on the stuff. I wish I had bet on a few of these chip designers with my portfolio, like as much as I was talking about it, which is, that's a good thing about podcasts too. You have the record of all of your guesses, right? But where do I see it? If I see that the commoditization of the very powerful models makes it so that differentiation is going to be critical. It's how it's differentiated. I also see that teams are going to commoditize. Teams are going to realize that some percentage of the things they produce are actually commodities, but their unique voice and their human in the loop is going to be the only thing that really ends up being like super special. There are certain types of content where, historical perception of how much of a commodity they were has to be flipped, or else they'll just become commodities. And so a great example of this would be early stage awareness content. Like everyone can write an article about, what is AI? Why is your article about what is AI special? That's the actual question. What do you know about this? What's the unique angle you bring to that page that allows you to have long-term success with that page? And so I think you go from realizing that people need to service all stages of the journey. That was 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when everybody realized they needed a content strategy. Now they're like, ooh, yay, I can write these things really fast. But then everybody can write these things really fast. Now you have to figure out how you can write great things almost every time. And that's where it's going. But where I do see if I were going as far as, I'm not going to go 5 years, but I'll go 2 to 3 years in the future, the output to outcome rate will not be solely dictated by information retrieval based search. And that's going to flip people on their heads. The information retrieval based search becoming less of part of why websites succeed doesn't mean the death of the search engines. It means that they are going to be part of us. And a gentleman at Georgia Tech when I was in college, his name was Thad Starner. I worked on some things with him, and I was an admirer of him. He was the guy that was walking around college campus in 1999 with a infrared glasses on, and he was punching in stuff with his handheld twiddler. Look it up, a handheld input device. It's going to be that in 5 years. I can already, and I've been doing this as like tests, I can already, have something with me at all times that makes everything that I interact with, every person I interact with, every discussion, I can have that documented, and I can then have it interpreted to benefit my business. So the future of use here is going to be where we recognize that us talking to each other is so valuable. Us talking to ourselves, us thinking, us dreaming, every interaction we have, every keystroke we type, email we send has value. And this type of technology is going to extract that value and put it into places where then it can become my business's value. And I dream about the world where everything, obviously not your personal and all that stuff, everything that your non-personal stuff is all captured and interpreted so that it could become ammunition for you to win a deal or for you to best represent your business. And I think that's your 4 or 5 year forecast, is that it's almost already there. I was wowing some people with some things that I had built with vision and voice where, I could snap a picture off their wall and, snap another picture off their wall and then show them the experience 5 years down the road if those two artists had collaborated and built a new piece of art. Some of the stuff. So imagine if I'm looking around the room and that vision can be interpreted in that way. Like the value that my eyes are bringing, the value that our discussion's bringing, all of that is the future.
Yeah. No, I love that, because I think what you nailed it with is AI is becoming a great commodity, right? Everyone has access to the same types of large language models to generate content, and all of that starts looking the same, feeling the same. I mean, when ChatGPT first came out, because it was just a small slice of the content that was being published on the web, it perhaps had a more unique, original voice, particular style. But when those types of models are everywhere and the content gets saturated by the same type of models generating content, then all of a sudden it feels generic. And I think to stand out in that sea of generic content, you do need to have much more personalized or opinionated, much more unique, much more differentiated content that really expresses who you are as an individual or who you are as a company brand. And you're really adding something that's net new to the set of knowledge or set of opinions that's out on the public web. It's also why you see atypical responses, like some, let's say some posts on Twitter or LinkedIn get massively more engagement and comments, right? Because they're actually saying something that's original and net new, versus the more generic posts that everyone is kind of regurgitating back and forth. It feels like an echo chamber. That's not getting any sort of engagement, right? Because everyone's kind of seen it. It doesn't really move the needle. So I think we have to really start thinking about how do we use AI to set ourselves apart, not just use AI. And then I think the future that you put out there is, people will have access to lots of information readily available. It's how do you then collaborate with actual other people and let that sort of collaboration, the synergy there, drive to like new levels of newness, right? Because that's really where there'll be new content and people could stand apart. In that vein, I'm very curious what you think about some of the applications that are coming up about that are built on large language models that help writers write. So, Jasper being one of them, writer.com, copy.ai, even ChatGPT. There's so many. I mean, those are some of the big ones, but these are tools to help writers generate content. Is there defensibility? Is there a moat there? I mean, what are your prospects for that type of software long term?
Yeah. So I mean, I have a writing assistant product that is in our optimized solution that is uses our topic modeling in context and provides kind of a unique aspect, a unique interpretation of this. And that's something that I'm working on improving as well. It's very similar to the way that writer Jasper being a more generic solution. It was founded on, just using OpenAI's API. And now they're getting into how can we make these more bespoke and tuned for enterprise, which is a needed step when, the world became democratized at the low end, and they were kind of first, they had those early API keys. Writer really taking that enterprise model, thinking about security, thinking about, modeling tone voice, a lot of other types of interpretations of that. I think that those solutions are absolutely defensible. They become kind of the artist's interpretation, I think, though. I think they become the outputs still need to be tuned to ensure that your voice and your tone, where I've seen very successful writers adopt, and some that work with, MarketMuse, also some of these other solutions, or a combination of them, is where they are like crazy into almost like gamifying the process, where it's like, no, I need this to include this area of expertise. And they're going, no, it's almost like they are just into that style of process, but not all writers are, right? What I've said to this topic is that not all writers are great editors, and most great editors aren't good writers. And what this brings us is to this weird confluence of, we're asking writers to be editors. We're asking, oh, great, you're a fantastic chef. Can you farm? A lot of these folks are not it's not going to be easy transition. That has to be learned. So I think the more of the problem is that the writers who are awesome at writing, these processes are very alien to them. But if we can coach them to get to so that the output's actually better than they could have produced, those are the winners. The writing that I can do, I can write about 10 times as much content, and the outcome that I can write is absolutely better every time. And so we got to get more people who that is their world, and from these things, and we aren't there yet. These solutions do not get users there. I'll give you a great example of this. So I work with a major publisher who publishes on a popular brand that people are really into. They go to places that are themed in it, and they also write about it. Yeah. And his key thing was like, I don't want any advice from any tool, from anything, unless it appeals to super fans of this brand. Sure. Can you do that? And I can do that, right? I can give advice that is only appropriate for super fans with my technology, because I'm really thinking about human in the loop. But you aren't going to get that out of other solutions. So like, if you really care about that target audience right now, the solutions that you named, it's going to require a lot of, touching and sculpting. And that's where we are. We won't be there forever, but it needs to get to the point where those human in the loop elements aren't really optional.
No, I think you're right, which is a lot of these companies right now, they're mostly wrappers off of either OpenAI or something similar to OpenAI. They do introduce tooling to go and work with OpenAI a little bit better. Like they may create places for you to load data and save sessions and collaborate and things like that. But ultimately, the generations are a crude starting point. So unless you can go and really have the generations be aligned with what makes a super fans tick, right? Like what really gets them going, gets them jazzed up. Unless it has generations that are of that mold, the content's not going to be any good without a significant amount of sculpting, as you put it, right? And I think that's right. It'll be interesting to see which ones win out, because I think you could still see several winners, but it's very likely some of the very common names that you see out there won't win because they just won't get it right, and someone else will like see the market opportunity, see the failures of the first or second wave, and then introduce a much better set of offerings. So, Jeff, just switching gears here just slightly, how should marketing teams redefine success in an AI-enhanced world where everyone's using AI tools? It's not just content, I imagine, right? So generating content's easy. It's not the volume of content. How should they be thinking about success nowadays?
Yeah, it's very difficult to answer that question right now. This is the most disruptive period. I think that leadership needs to understand and be thoughtful that marketing teams are in a disruptive state. They need to invest in and understand that there's likely different KPIs. If you have a business who is and I'm saying a don't, then I'll say a do, right? The don't is, if you've been traditionally expecting money in, outcomes out to be like easy to calculate or linear, it was never a good idea for content, but some teams, had to live in that construct. That's not realistic. I think that the direct ROI correlation to ads, display ads, PPC ads, paid, and content, it will become more difficult to defend as realistic. There will be the all marketing channels are going to have to be assessed as a group and then also separated more thoughtfully than they are today. I think a lot of people, they just like, I can't figure out content, or I can't figure out this other channel, social, so I'm just going to buy, right? That's not going to work as well in a world where information retrieval based search isn't, only game in town.
Right.
And ad units are going to be tricky. I mean, you look at some of the largest publishers in the world, and they are trying to create infinite personalization experiences, right? Oh boy, you better make sure that your ads are personalized, right? You better make sure that you've got your messaging right. So what I would say is, I think that teams need am I putting my best foot forward KPI, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And that's that it sounds a little bit lovey and like I'm going to give hugs out, but it's really you really got to say, am I getting the expertise of the business on my website and in my campaigns? And are there any dark corners of my website, or are there any areas that I'm not proud of? The marketing team should be able to stand up and say, we've gotten all that stuff out of there. Because in the future, where we're going to be living in an infinite scale scenario for a lot of these commodities, the queen there is the one who can stand by everything they produce as being top notch. And so I do feel like there's a challenge for ROI calculation there. But KPIs of the business should be that I'm proud of every material that my team's produced. And that's going to set you apart, because you're going to be living in a sea of mediocrity.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. And I think it does differ by company, but ultimately what you're looking for is also nonlinear growth, right? In terms of engagement and impressions. And are more a greater percentage of your content generating those like nonlinear returns? If you're not
I got one
seeing
more.
that,
I got one more for you, because I'm actually totally interested in your take on this too. Is marketing teams who rely on channel marketing, their job became very difficult, because their affiliates and their channels have to bring unique value now, and before they weren't. And so that's a big gulp for a lot of teams. And I think 2024 is going to be a huge wipeout for anyone relying on affiliates who haven't set their table properly. Sorry to interrupt. I just forgot that point. And that's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what are some ethical considerations for companies that they're using AI for content creation and marketing? What should they keep in mind?
Gosh. Well, what I've heard, what I disagree with, is that we shouldn't open up our content to these models, right? I haven't heard a good business case for it, right? For me, as a marketer, as a content strategist, as someone who loves everything about AI and information retrieval and all this stuff, I see wherever, if somebody's going to put my brand, my page, my logo on anything, and I have a chance to win that effectively auction, and it's worthwhile for me to win that auction, I want to get that extra real estate. So if somebody's going to give me 4 melees to battle, I will fight all 4 and try to win all 4, right? So if you don't allow your pages to be accessible, you're basically taking yourself out of the game. Will that entity steal content and give someone an experience or give them a result? Yes, they will give them that result, whether you're in it or whether you're not. Now, is there an opportunity for, factioning groups to gather together and try to change that construct so that, could the 10 biggest publishers in the world all band together and change policy? Hell yeah, they could. But if they want to find two people who could probably influence that coup, they're on this podcast, right? And it'd be you and me. But no, that's the kind of thing where until that happens, if you're not the big fish in those scenarios, you're actually probably hurting yourself. And so the ethical concerns for users of these things would be: are you plagiarizing? Are you publishing content that exhibits expertise that isn't your expertise? And I've said the train is coming for people who are faking authenticity. It's already started to come in the last Google update, by the way. But coming in next year is, it's Sports Illustrated, great example, faking authenticity. This week they had fake authors and AI generated images being fake authors, right? The companies who fake authenticity are going to explode and implode all the time until people realize they can't fake authenticity. So I think the ethics are: should we fake authenticity, and should we fake expertise? And the ethics of that are, we can get away with it for a little bit, but the juice ain't worth the squeeze in the end. And so I think all teams should be looking at themselves in the mirror and saying, gosh, if I cut corners here, I'm risking my whole brand and my reputation. And it's not just a shot. It's not just because AI is hot. This is a big issue if we make the mistake. These are going to be lingering wounds that's going to hurt readership, especially for publishers. Look at Gannett, USA Today, Sports Illustrated, Red Ventures with CNET. I mean, these are scars that are going to take a long time to heal. So I think the question of should I be ethical on these things, honestly, I can't imagine someone being able to stand in front of their board or their leadership group and make any other choice.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's right. I think the biggest worry is the plagiarism, right? So your large language models are crawling pages, then spinning them up as content when someone prompts the model, right? So it's able to generate based on prior information that's maybe super similar. And then that gets into the realm of copyright infringement and plagiarism, just gray area. But I think what you touched on is super important, which is unless you're really generating content that is authentic to who you are as a brand, there's going to be a huge backlash, right? From the viewership or the readership, they're going to see it, and you do that one or two times, you're going to lose the trust of your audience, and it's really not worth it. So Jeff, a couple of lightning round questions. I'm curious, what do you do to stay on top of everything that's happening in the AI world, just given the number of updates that are happening on a daily basis?
And sorry, I got a little background noise in here if you can hear it. But yeah, I am, as horrible as some people think it is, and as much noise is in, the X Twitter is a big piece of where I get my information. I read Google Scholar. I read every scholarly document that comes out on these topics, and I have for more than a decade. I used to have more people who in this space who were really into that. But that's a big part of my work. That's part of what I do on the daily basis. That's when I'm looking at my phone, it's usually like reading, documents. I've been called the Santa Claus of SEO because people send me blank letters all the time and unsigned letters from their internal documents and confidential stuff and that I shouldn't read or shouldn't have. And for years and years and years. And, the dead letter office is sometimes on my phone. So I am very thankful that I have a great network of people. I've been doing search engine optimization related things for 25 years. And what comes with that is, just a lot of people want to send me stuff and, have me check it out. I keep that fresh. I have some people who I've just known for the last 2 years who blow me away every time we have a conversation. And honestly, you're one of them. And it's where I'm thinking like, no one in no business, whether you're SaaS or marketing right now, can stand still. If you're not on the lead, I read, Medium and everything towards data science is a great resource. And if you're standing still, I call it the ROS, the risk of standing still. The risk of standing still is switch industries. You're dead.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that ridiculous right now, right? So yeah, just keeping your network going and making sure that you're, adding new people to that network, because you might be staling up just talking to your friends. Those have always been my tactic, but it's no time more valuable than right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, right now the AI is a huge opportunity, but it's a huge threat. It's an existential threat for some businesses that don't move fast enough. So this has been fascinating to hear a little bit about the secret sauce that makes Jeff Coyle. So really appreciate that. We're at the end of the podcast. Where can listeners find you or find more about Market Muse going forward?
So MarketMuse.com, go check it out. We have you get full access to an agreement, one of our agreements for a week and a reverse trial. Go check that out. I'm on Twitter, Jeffrey_Coyle. I'm on LinkedIn. That's ebbs and flows a lot of times, but if you want to see the snarky Jeff Coyle, it's usually on the X Twitter. You can also email me, Jeff@MarketMuse.com. I answer everything. I'd give you my phone number if I thought that was socially appropriate. But yeah, go check out Market Muse. Check out what I do. Check if you're in Georgia and you like beer, go check out SilverBluff.com. That's my microbrewery. Yeah, that's about it. So please do that. Jeff@MarketMuse.com.
Awesome, Jeff. Well, I look forward to sampling a beer at that brewery next time I'm in Georgia. Did not know about that, so that's awesome. I love beer, and that's a good choice. It's been a pleasure having you, Jeff. Look forward to continuing this conversation in the new year, and just thanks for being here.
Such a pleasure, and what a great conversation, and I really appreciate you. Cheers.
Absolutely.